Welcome to the Ascent. This is Sam McGee with Crestmont Private Wealth. I'm the owner of Crestmont Private Wealth, a fiduciary advisor with offices in Houston, Texas, and Boerne, Texas, and we are looking to potentially expand out west. Coming soon, potentially. We're talking to our leasing agent right now. Not west like West Coast. I mean like West Texas, which is very fitting because we have a special guest today who happens to be in the energy business, Garrett Daley. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Garrett and I met at a very, well, I would say this is kind of a mixed bag. We technically met at a bar, but it was a men's Bible study at a bar.
It was.
Right? That was men's night, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Over at Free Roam Brewing? Yeah. So we met. I think I was wearing a board member's shirt, if I remember correctly, who's with Scout Energy, not an endorsement. You came up to me and you were working at Valero.
Yes, sir.
And we struck up this conversation, and then we've been talking the past year. And take us back a little bit before we get into this story we want to talk about today. Take us back to your upbringing in Boerne, maybe at what high school you went to, where you went to college, and bring us up to Free Roam.
Yeah, grew up in Boerne. I lived here for about 20 years now. Went to Champion High School, graduated in 15. Went off to college at Abilene Christian. Started off majoring in engineering, ended up transferring to business finance.
Good mix.
And graduated there in 2019. Went off to Dallas, was working in upstream oil and gas. That's where I was familiar with your Scout jacket. Scout's based out of Dallas.
It's a nice jacket, too.
Very nice jacket. My roommate actually went to work for Scout, so was very familiar with Scout, and they were one of our previous clients. So I wanted to get back to the hill country. I spent a couple years in Dallas, I said, well, if I come back to Boerne, there's only one company I want to work for, and that was Valero. So ended up, sending all my cards into Valero, and it worked out. So I spent about 4 years there in the finance department, learning the refined fuels and wholesale fuel side. Ended up making the decision to break off and start my own gig, and in came American Petroleum. And we're about a year and 2 months into this, and we are now distributing about 80,000 gallons a month.
Incredible. So let's go back, because this story is really good. And the reason we're sharing this story is not to promote your company, and it's not an advertisement. It's just a really cool story. We meet at a men's Bible study at a bar because we have a common friend, a guy named Ryan Lynch, who's a firefighter, paramedic here in town. What's up, Ryan? And you and I go to lunch, and you tell me about how you're going to start American Petroleum. And I'm about, I don't want to say this, but I'm about 20 years older than you. And I feel like I'm looking in the mirror to when I started my business 15 years ago. And, you're obviously a really driven guy. You had a really good plan. And I remember you sending me a whole bunch of documents, and I told you, hey, listen, this is great. I think it's incredible. What a great idea. But you're going to have to learn how to adapt. So as we walked in today and you were sharing some of the stories, maybe share with some of the listeners, like how you got it going, what you do, and maybe some of the stories you shared, like the hospital today, just things that are kind of like the little adaptations people don't know about that are kind of neat.
I guess first and foremost on the front end, as I shared with you, was the business plan. And I spent, 4 months spending countless hours in Black Rifle Coffee Shop down the road here.
Again, not an endorsement, but we talk about a lot of these things we go to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, but it is good coffee.
Just putting together a plan as organized as possible, as thorough as possible, financials, what we're going to do, customer base, you name it, everything.
It was good.
18 pages, I believe.
Oh yeah, I remember.
That was really what set the foundation. I had the vision laid out. I had the name on hold with the state of Texas controller. I had everything put together. And really the only thing left was to pitch it to my investor and go from there. So, which I was pretty confident in, after putting in all that work, it was going to be a yes. From there, obviously I got the green light with him. We created the entity, slowly but surely started adding on clients. I had to pivot a couple times our customer base. For some reason, I thought that the ranchers out in the Hill Country, Boerne area were going to be our main clientele. Well, newsflash, they don't burn as much fuel as you think.
And to be clear for our listeners, you deliver fuel in a portable fashion to end user.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
We are a distributor, a bulk fuel distributor. We buy wholesale and deliver it to the end user.
So give us a couple of your high lows. This is something we do around the dinner table a lot, but I think some of the younger listeners, and honestly, some of our older listeners that are in oil and gas or other fields that have gone there into entrepreneurship and done things, they've experienced a lot of high lows. But people that are listening to this that are thinking about drafting an 18-page business plan, give us a couple of high lows. And would you please touch on that hospital story?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That was good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a low, it wasn't really a low. It was a learning experience, and it was a deal I worked out with my investor was that, hey, I was going to be one of those drivers for that first year. We didn't know it was going to turn into a year, but I was out there in the field. I was doing it. I was doing the invoicing, but I was also out there on the front lines, talking with the customers, driving the truck, delivering the fuel.
Owner-operator.
Owner-operator.
Love it.
100%. I wouldn't trade that for the world now. I actually, just this morning, I was riding with one of our drivers because I love going out to the customers' job sites and making an appearance and just making sure everything's going well. So that quickly became a low down the line because you're driving all day. It's 100 down here in South Texas. Long days, 12, 13-hour days. Go home, eat dinner. Then guess what? You're working on the books all night long. You learn how to adapt, though. You got to do everything, and that's just part of it. Starting a new business, you're doing all the grunt work. You're doing everything.
That's right. Well, you did it early. You told me earlier you're 29 years young.
Yes, sir.
Are you glad you did this pre-marriage, kids?
Yes.
Is that fair to say on the radio?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
100%.
You might get a couple phone calls after this. I don't know.
No, I wouldn't trade it for the world now. And I'm so passionate about what we do. You mentioned to bring up the hospital story.
Is that a high?
That is absolutely
because I think this is a cool story.
This is about a month-old opportunity we have with one of our customers. We got an emergency call on a Sunday morning. Typically, would be in church. Got the phone call. Hey, we've got two big, large generators going out to a hospital. We need y'all out there ASAP. Okay, no problem. We're on our way. We get out there, come to find out these generators are powering 4 chiller units that went down for the hospital in San Antonio. Come to find out, these chiller units are keeping the OR room cold.
Wow.
It just means that much more. Our fuel is powering the hospital chiller units to keep them at operating temperature so people can go through their surgery and potentially have life-changing surgery, or life-saving surgery.
Wow.
And it takes the business to a whole nother level. Every time I leave that job site, after filling up with fuel or going to check on things, making sure it's okay, it just hits home, it means that much more. So, I'm very passionate about what we do. We keep the lights on and power going for numerous businesses when their power goes out, and people don't realize how critical and essential fuel is.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject, and I think I shared this with you that we at Crestmont Private Wealth work with a lot of energy executives and engineers, and not exclusively, a whole host of wealthy and affluent families, but I hear about energy all the time, but I think our average listener base doesn't really think about it. They go to the gas station, they stick their credit card on there, and there goes the fuel. It's kind of like, my kids think that water comes out of the tap, and like it actually has got to get there, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, kids. So what would you want the public to know? What would you want business owners and maybe even your kind of ideal client out there? And this isn't an endorsement. I'm curious, what would you want people to know about your service and the critical nature of it? And who would be that audience?
Yeah, really anyone who needs bulk fuel, whether you need a portable generator when your AC goes out at your place of business, you work for a company, a construction company that's obviously running heavy equipment, machinery. You work for an agency that responds to natural disasters. You need portable power, which runs off of fuel.
So like hurricanes.
We're entering hurricane season. We work, we've got government contracts. We're in the FEMA system. We're ready to respond when we get the call. So anything that runs off of bulk fuel, we've got you covered. And American Petroleum is passionate about what we do. We're professional, we're reliable, and we're always a phone call away. We're 24/7, 7 days a week. So we got clean trucks. Our drivers I take pride in our drivers, and I'll brag on this. You know, our most recent driver we just hired was a 6-year Navy SEAL veteran.
Wow.
He just came to us looking for something to do, and he's phenomenal. But we take pride in our servicemen and women, and, you know, we just take pride in what we do all around.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Garrett Daley, you are an impressive young man, and I say young man. You have a far more range of, I would say, emotional intelligence and experience already than maybe people twice your age. But it takes going through the gauntlet, I think, you know, putting yourself out there, taking that risk, getting in the arena, so to speak. I'm sure you've
Absolutely.
seen that great speech. It's refreshing. It's refreshing to be sitting here with you, you know, 2 years after we met, and you're doing it. And I'm glad to hear it's going well. And if you could leave one closing piece, maybe for somebody who's aspiring to do not what you do, not maybe your industry, but somebody who's writing that plan, what one piece of advice would you give them?
I think the best advice I could give someone with the entrepreneurial mindset, someone who wants to or is even thinking about just making the leap at some point, is you're going to reach a point where you're really going to second guess it. And you just got to be ready to say, look, you know, it's now or never, and you've got to take the risk. You can't do it without risk. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing I talked to you about, whether, you know, I was working for a Fortune 500 company, Valero headquarters, San Antonio, great career. Was I willing to take that risk? And I was so driven and motivated. I wanted to do it. I took the risk.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to choose when's the time, and, you know, that's part of it. But if someone wants to make the change or take the leap to be an entrepreneur, you have to take a risk and take the leap. And you just have to choose the best time to do it, and don't look back from there.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you did it in your late 20s. I did it at 33. I had a Fortune 500 job at a bank. Very, very similar. You have more hair than me, and you're more well-spoken than me at this age. But it's fantastic to have you on the show. We've got Garrett Daley, owner of American Petroleum here in Boerne, Texas, in the energy industry. I think we're going to get a lot of comments on this show. I really appreciate you coming on. Let's do this again in a few years and compare notes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. I can't thank you enough for having me on. I appreciate it.
Y'all have a great weekend, and God bless.